And what's up, everybody? It's Steve D'Angelo with the Faceoff Sports Network, back for a Week 16 waiver wire Q&A. We'll also take your start-sit questions. I see some start-sit questions in there. I understand your teams, for the most part, your rosters are pretty much set. A lot of these names that are out on the wire, aren't the best, but you still want to try to optimize your teams as much as possible. Cut any waste, cut any injured guys that you have, take guys away from your opponents. Now that you're in the semifinals, you want to look at their team, see what they possibly need, and snatch that up as well. And I understand some leagues, waivers might be over. You might have any more pickups, like in high stakes. You're locked out from pickups the rest of the year. So we'll get into all of it. But make sure you guys are liking, subscribing to the show, sharing, hitting that notification button. If you're watching on Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter, head over to our YouTube page and give us a like over there. We also have a jersey giveaway that we will be doing Christmas. So you got to subscribe to our channel. Send us proof of subscription on our social media or email us at fffaceoff@gmail.com. Winner gets their choice of an NFL jersey from Fanatics, $129 value. So pretty sweet. And the winner will be announced on 12/25 Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas to anybody that subscribes and sends us some proof. All right, let's get to the questions in the chat. We got Matt Tate, our boy, says, should I stick with Bates, the kicker Bates, and Green Bay defense, or try to pick up Houston defense in case Mahomes doesn't play, or McLaughlin, kicker from the Bucks? Carson Wentz it's possible he plays. I saw Mahomes practice in full today, so it seems like it's going to be Mahomes. Mahomes knows that if he sits out, there's a chance that the Bills, with their schedule that's as easy as Swiss cheese, 2 games against the Patriots, 1 against the Jets, they should easily win all 3 or take care of business there. And you never know, they could lose 1. But, basically the Chiefs just got to win 2 games. They're up 2 games. The Bills have the tiebreaker from beating them early in the year. So Mahomes kind of knows that. I think Mahomes is going to, and he said his injury wasn't as significant as the one he had, a couple of years ago. So it looks like he'll make his way back. This guy always seemingly kind of gets these ankle injuries, but seems to, make his way back on the field. They could get Hollywood Brown potentially back this week as well. So that could be interesting. But let's see, real quick. Let me just look at Green Bay. Oh, yeah, they get New Orleans, man. I mean, no Derek Carr. We saw how bad Jake Hanner looked last week. Horner, and then Spencer Rattler came in. You got to stick with Green Bay defense, man. 100%. I would stick with Green Bay. And then Bates or McLaughlin. Let's see. Detroit gets Chicago in Chicago. Not sure what the weather is going to be there. Take a quick look. That always could be tricky, obviously. We're in the winter season, and the weather is definitely a factor. So I'm not seeing anything right now, but pay attention to that. And Bates, been pretty solid for the most part, but missed a kick last week. But he's been pretty solid, and it's always going to be a great game script with the Lions. They're always going to be playing ahead or, at least driving the ball. So he's going to kick a ton of field goals, or Chase McLaughlin. And Tampa gets Dallas in the Dome. So, I kind of like I don't see any weather in Chicago, but that could change from now until then. Certainly. Obviously, Dallas is going to be pristine. And there is not an update on the weather here. So I would say go McLaughlin. There's probably going to be something going on in Chicago, whether it's rain or wind or some shit. You never know. So I would go with the pretty dome, perfect conditions, and McLaughlin. Now, the next week, You could always pick a kicker back up. But they go to San Francisco too, so that could be some weather too for Bates. So yeah, I would go with Packers D and McLaughlin there. Matt also says, "Who are my three wide receivers? London, Puka, Garrett Wilson, Lamb, and Jawan Jennings." And then he says, "Would you start Brenton Strange over Hockenson if you're already predicted to lose and looking for upside in the tight end position?" I would stick with Hockenson. I know Brenton Strange had a big game and he got a million targets, and he's not a bad player either. He's actually fairly talented, and I think he's like tight end 8 when Ingram is out. In the few spots, 3 or 4 spots he started in Ingram's place this year. Obviously, last week helped, had a really, really big game, but I still think I would stick with Hockenson. Minnesota gets Seattle this week. So yeah, I think I would stick with Hockenson there. Jacksonville gets the Raiders. That is a good matchup. I mean, there is a case for Brenton Strange. There is a case there. And like you're saying, chasing upside, I kind of see what you're saying there. It's not a bad point there, Matt. See how it swings out. Could Brenton Strange outscore Hockenson? Sure. I just think at this point, like in one of my lineups last week, I sat Devonta Smith for Christian Watson. Part of that was because I was going against Jordan Love. So I kind of wanted to offset the points. Now that I think back about it, I should have just went with my stud. And they're going against the Steelers, and Devonta's been kind of tricky all year. Very kind of inconsistent, but he had a smash game. If I would have started him out of one. So I just think you go with, in the playoffs, you kind of just want to stick with the most talented guy, and try not to chase stuff so much. Now it certainly could work out with Strange for sure. Back to the receivers: London, Puka, Garrett Wilson, Lamb, and Jennings. Well, Puka is definitely one. I mean, there's no chance you're sitting him. CeeDee Lamb continues to get it done, so he's in there as well. Michael Penix, that's big news, guys. He is stepping in for Kirk Cousins this week. It is breaking. We probably all seen it, but yeah, Michael Penix will be starting this week for Kirk Cousins. And we'll talk about that real quick as we're talking about Matt's receivers this week. But Michael Penix, I knew I was kind of suspect on him. And then that semifinal bowl game, he just played out of his freaking mind, avoiding pressure, making unbelievable throws. And, look at those 3 receivers in the NFL. Jalen Polk's not really doing too much. Dunze is kind of struggling a little bit here and there. And then McMillan's coming on a little bit. But Penix really had all 3 of those guys going pretty good. The national championship game, wasn't really the same. He was a little bit hobbled, but wasn't reacting to the pressure as well. He kind of collapsed against that Michigan defense. So there's definitely some concerns about Penix. Like if they can't really protect him well, I definitely have some concerns. But it's a good matchup against the Giants. It's not a terrible matchup against Washington next week. But this week for Drake London against the Giants, I don't mind it. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of the unknown going with Penix in his first NFL game. But definitely Puka, definitely Lamb. The question is, do you start London over Garrett Wilson or Jawan Jennings? The Jets are getting the Rams this week. So that's a nice one. That's a nice spot for Garrett Wilson. Now, Devontae Adams is getting more targets. He has been Aaron Rodgers' boy forever. It just absolutely went bonkers last week. Adams did the same thing last year in the fantasy playoffs. He went nuts. He elevated a couple of my fantasy teams this week, and he did the same thing last year. So that's a good, nice little matchup. And then you got Jawan Jennings, who is taking on Miami this week. Yeah, I don't know. Purdy's a little bit off right now. I don't mind the matchup, but I think, man, I think with the doubt of Penix, I kind of want to see what he can do. I like the matchup against the Giants. But I'm going to go Garrett Wilson. I'm going to go Puka, and I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb there. Thanks for the question, Matt. Emiliano Gonzalez says Colts or Falcons defense this week. And the Falcons, the Falcons outscored the freaking Vikings last night. I thought the Vikings would be a better play, but Desmond Ridder was just he's just terrible. Got it going on that last drive, and I lost in a playoff game because Myers caught that last pass. I lost by like 3 points. Now it's Yahoo. If you guys know Yahoo, sometimes they do those stat corrections on Thursday, and this is an IDP league, but looks like I'm going to go down to my brother, and that's actually the league where I did not start Devonta Smith. So I'm very disappointed, but hey, I play in a lot of leagues. He doesn't play in as many, so give him the W. I don't feel as bad. I still got a lot of teams left. Let him enjoy the fantasy the rest of the way. Fair game. It was a really interesting game, man. Like he got that last touchdown from Dobbs because he had Jordan Love, and then that helped him. I got the last touchdown from Jameson Williams, but anyway, I won't bore you with that. But now Atlanta gets another great matchup against another shit quarterback situation. We may see Tim Boyle this week for the Giants, and he might be worse than Desmond Ridder. If not just as bad. So Atlanta's defense, either way, even if DeVito plays or Drew Lock plays, Atlanta's defense is falling into a nice little 1-2 punch here. Down the stretch. And they're still playing to get into the playoffs. Quarterback change now. They're trying their last ditch effort to win this division over the Bucs. They have the tiebreaker over the Bucs. So yeah, I don't mind Atlanta defense. The Colts get Tennessee, so that is a good matchup too. We saw Levis get benched after 4 interceptions. Rudolph's a lot safer with the ball, though. He's better, not turning it over as much. Colts defense could be very solid in that one too, but I think I got to go with Atlanta, man, just because the Giants defense is an absolute disaster right now. Matt Tate says, rank these running backs. Montgomery is gone for the year. Yeah, big injury, MCL injury. And I have Pollard dealing with an injury. Yeah, we don't know what his deal is. The ankle injury, left the game, came back. Might be stuck playing Tracy and one of these off waivers. Kendry Miller, Alexander Madison, and Spears rank them highest priority. Well, Alexander Madison will probably split with Abdullah. I think McCormick is probably going to be out this week, so he's probably out of the way. And then Kamara with the groin injury sounds like he might be done for the year. So this might be the Kendry Miller show the rest of the way. Obviously, their quarterback situation is brutal. And they're taking on Green Bay this week. So it's like Kendry, yeah, he's going to get all the touches, but are they going to sniff the end zone? Is he going to catch passes out of the backfield? You would think, the way they use Kamara, I think they would give some dump offs to Kendry Miller. And then Madison for the Raiders, man, this is not a great situation for you. Obviously, Montgomery is a big, big loss. Trying to project this is very, very tough. Seattle. I'm thinking Madison's still playing for Minnesota. Las Vegas gets Jacksonville. But then you got freaking Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Although Pierce said there is a chance that Aiden O'Connell could come back and play. So if that's the case, based off the matchup, if Aiden O'Connell is going to play, I would go with Madison over Kendry Miller, even though I think Kendry Miller is a better player. I just don't like the quarterback situation and the matchup. And then the last one you have here is Tajay Spears, and we still don't know. Pollard could potentially get back into the game, get back this week, and they do take on the Colts. So I think you'd have to go with Tajay Spears if Pollard is out. I think that's the call. If Pollard is in, I think maybe I'd go with Madison. Um, he kind of would return to that main running back role with Madison with Aiden O'Connell. So it's kind of tricky, man. It depends on if Pollard's coming back. Depends on if Aiden O'Connell's coming back. So I would say, hit us up, later in the week, and we'll kind of get back to this question. But off the top, I would say Spears, Miller, Madison. But if Miller's going to have the job the rest of the way, maybe I'd rank him one. But for this week, I would say Spears, especially if Pollard's out. But we'll have to wait and see. And Matt Tate says, does Rise of the Phoenix? Yes. Phoenix is starting this week. We'll see how he does. Again, I don't know. I don't know how this guy's going to do in the NFL. If you protect Penix, though, I feel like he could pick you apart. I really feel like if you could give him time, he could do a really good job picking you apart. But if you get pressure on him, I think he could easily crumble. Not the most mobile guy. So might be a little rough, but a great matchup against the Giants. The Giants they're a disaster. They packed it in. They've completely packed. They're just a complete shit show. I mean, the Jets are actually playing better football than them right now, so I'm kind of happy about that. Michael O'Day says Mark Andrews or Cade Otton. And should I start Caleb Williams against Detroit? I hope you have a better option than Caleb Williams. But Detroit's defense is banged up, and Caleb's going to have to throw a bunch. I mean, they're going to have to throw a ton, most likely again. So, I mean, just off garbage stats, it might not be terrible. I kind of want to see what Caleb did in their first matchup. Or did they play yet this year? Yeah, they played. Yeah, that was the game where on Thanksgiving where the freaking Eberflus didn't call a timeout and Caleb didn't get the playoff. Yeah. So Caleb in that game, 256, 3 touchdowns in the dome. Now, again, I don't know what the Chicago weather is going to be this week. I could take a quick look at the 10-day forecast in Chicago for this week. But it's going to be cold. It's probably going to be cloudy. That's for sure. Is there going to be any wind? Is there going to be any rain? Is there going to be any snow? We don't know. We'll have to wait until game time. Right now, I see partly sunny, 30 degrees, 5-mile-an-hour winds. So it looks like just a fairly cold day. 30 is not terrible. You're running around. You feel pretty good. The adrenaline's pumping. You don't really feel that. And then sun's out. No win. So, yeah, maybe Caleb's not a bad start this week. He's kind of hard to trust. But again, the Detroit defense is banged up. They're home this time. They're going to have to pass. So he should give you a decent floor, I would think. What other options do you have is my question. And then Andrews or Otton. Otton has kind of fell off. Since Evans has come back, Jalen McMillan has emerged. Otton hasn't been doing anything. So it's kind of hard to go to Otton. And I think you got to go with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, yeah, and Mark Andrews. I think that's got to be the play for you this week against Pittsburgh. I think that's the move, man. I mean, Otton against Dallas, not a bad matchup. I just think, go with Mark Andrews. He's been the staple in fantasy. He's been the guy. He's the more talented guy. Made a great catch this week. Great catch last week. I mean, he's making some. He's just ultimately talented. So again, it comes down to starting your studs in the fantasy playoffs, going with the guys that you had the highest draft capital on for the most part. Obviously, if they've been bust all year, Andrew started out like a bust, but he's been very, very good down the stretch. So there you go. Emiliano says, I got get Freiermuth or Strange off waivers. Interesting. Freiermuth, 3 straight games with a touchdown. So he's not giving you a ton of fantasy points, but he's been pretty solid. They take on Baltimore this week. Let me just pull this up. Should have had this up earlier. And then Strange. I mean, Strange is again, he's tight end 8 with Evan Ingram out. It was like 3 or 4 starts he had this year. And I noticed him. Like I noticed him that one game he came in for Ingram, and I'm like, this guy is actually not that bad. He definitely could play. And Mac Jones targeted the shit out of him last week. And Mac Jones, he's making Brian Thomas go, and he got Brent Strange going. So, not the worst option in the world. The Ravens against tight ends, the last 8 weeks, about middle of the pack. And Jacksonville, they're taking on the Raiders. The Raiders are second worst against tight ends. So very, very interesting. I mean, again, it comes down to what Matt said earlier. Maybe Strange has a little bit more upside. And again, tight end 8, can't really argue with that. He's been pretty solid every game he's been in there. And it's a good matchup against the Raiders. It's the second best matchup you could possibly have for tight end based off the last 8 weeks. So I don't mind going with Strange, man. But Freiermuth's been pretty hot, and Pickens is going to be out again. Possibly didn't practice again. 3 straight touchdowns. He's going to get heavily targeted. If they get into the red zone, he's going to be the guy they're looking for. So I want to say Freiermuth, but maybe Strange has a little bit more upside. But I think both guys are pretty good options, and I kind of feel like they stay around the same points wise, maybe around like the 10 floor for you. William Stevenson says, "Evening, Mr. D'Angelo. Good to see you, Will. Haven't seen you in a while, man. Welcome back." Jamie, our boy, says, "What up, dude? Good to see Jamie here." And Jamie says, "Great job on being the number 1 quarterback ranker in the world." Yeah, man. Did I get back to number 1? I didn't check. I think I was at number 3 last week. So yeah, that is pretty cool, actually, if you think about it. Fantasy Pros is like the only site that does the rankings for fantasy experts. And yeah, quarterback's been my best position. Running back, receiver, tight end haven't been the best, but I've been pretty good with the quarterbacks. So yeah, shout out to Jamie for shouting me out on that. Our boy Pete from the Faceoff says hi. Appreciate that, Pete. Welcome to the show. Should be on the show with me right now. I don't know what you're doing over there. Maybe you're making some steaks. I don't know. Maybe you're watching some shows. Maybe you're watching the NBA Cup. Bucks, Oklahoma City. I took the Bucks +6 in this one. Also, the bowl game, I took Memphis -5 in the over. So I don't know what the score is on that. If you see the score on that, let me know. I'm in a little bowl pool. So we'll see. Thoughts on Darnold this week from Installed One. Welcome to the show. Sammy Darnold playing really good football, man. Kevin O'Connell. I mean, look what he did for freaking Nick Mullins last year. Nick Mullins is throwing for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kirk Cousins, was he a product of the Kevin O'Connell system? Because he goes to Atlanta and he turns into an absolute pumpkin. But no, we've seen Kirk Cousins do with other coaches, obviously in Washington and in Minnesota before that. But yeah, Sam Darnold against Seattle, I do not mind it at all. Again, check on the weather. Seattle could have absolute downpour. You never know. But if the weather's okay, I feel very, very good about Sam Darnold. Jordan Addison, I mean, he really gets, overlooked because of Justin Jefferson, but he's very, very talented, very good route runner, just a very high quality receiver. And then you got TJ Hawkinson, and you got Aaron Jones, and you got McConnell running that system. So yeah, I feel fine about Sam Darnold. 2 touchdowns, 250. He should give you at least that. Michael Lopez says Penix, the league winner. I wouldn't call him a league winner, but could he, potentially win some super flex leagues or maybe some best ball leagues, or redraft leagues. I mean, possibly. The Giants is a very nice matchup. Washington isn't a bad matchup next week either. And that game did get flexed to the Sunday night game, so that we will see Michael Penix next Sunday night, not this Sunday, next Sunday, the Sunday after Christmas on prime time. So that should be interesting to watch. And again, my opinion on Penix is I feel like he needs to really have really good protection. So if he doesn't get that, he's going to be in trouble. So we'll see. We'll see how he does. But I feel like if you give him protection, he's very accurate. He could put the ball on the money, similar to Jared Goff. You give that guy protection. And again, that semifinals last year in the college playoff, his pocket presence was nice. His accuracy was unbelievable. And then he went against the Michigan defense and he just completely collapsed. So I feel like we can get a little bit of that. But against Giants and Washington, maybe not. And he certainly has some nice weapons. Darnell Mooney, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is, I wouldn't say he's a nice weapon, but at least he's decent. Bijan, Algier, Ray Buchanan, Ray McLeod. Where's that number 34 for a receiver? You remember when, cornerbacks used to wear that number? That was Ray Buchanan for the Falcons. So I wouldn't call him a league winner, but could be a decent pickup down the stretch. Jamie says, no, you sat Devonta Smith. Didn't you read my article? I had him in a great matchup as a top 15 receiver. Yeah, man. I mean, you normally start Pickens, and I had Pickens, I had Mooney, I had Christian Watson, and I had what was the other one? DK Metcalf. So, yeah, man. I wish I would have read your article. I should have. I'm a dumbass. So I will read it this week. I promise you that, Jamie. I will read your article this week, man. And then Pete says late nights with Steve D. Yes, man. 9:47. Not that late. Ain't that late. But yeah, I do some late shows. My NFL picks is after the Thursday night game. We're hitting like 1:00 in the morning sometimes. God's honest truth says, do you like Cup's chances this week? It's a tough decision being in the playoffs. Yeah, man. The playoffs, it's like you clicking, like, you're putting that guy in, you're taking him out, you put him in. Cup obviously gets the donut last week, kills you, but you survived. You survived it. And the Rams go on to take the Jets this week in New York. Again, check the weather. It's winter. It's December. Could be absolute shit weather in New Jersey and New York. The drones over there, who the hell knows? So, but I think for the most part, we just saw what Brian Thomas did. Even Parker Washington had a decent game. This Jets defense is not that scary, defense that we thought it was going to be. Even when Saleh was there, it was a little overrated. And then when Saleh left, it just got way worse. So I feel decent about Cooper Kupp. Feel decent about him. He's still a very solid receiver. He's still got Matt Stafford. That's going to be kind of a cool game to watch with Stafford and Rodgers going, the two veteran quarterbacks going at it. Should be an interesting game. Might be a nice little over, actually, if the weather holds up. But yeah, man, I don't mind Kupp this week against the Jets. Their defense is leaking of late, not playing the best. So I'm not really scared about the Jets defense or Sauce or DJ Reed. Justin Time says, I've got Gibbs, Connor, and Irving or Taylor. Gibbs, Connor, and Irving or Taylor. McLaurin, Devonta Smith, and Thomas at receiver. Taylor or Irving. And Jonathan Taylor, we all saw the play, lets the ball go. Now, there wasn't a pylon thing. Like, there's a chance, I guess, that he could have crossed the plane. But either way, you cannot make that play. And it was shocking to see that from a player like Jonathan Taylor. Like, I just would never expect that. What is this? His fifth year in the league. He's just never had any issues like that in his career. I don't know what he was thinking. I mean, I guess he's not really breaking off those big runs as much as he used to. So maybe like he's just like, oh, I did it. Finally, I'm back. And he just fucking, just let the ball out of his hands a little bit early there. But Indy is going to take on Tennessee. I'm sorry. Yeah, Tennessee this week. And then Bucky against the Cowboys. And Bucky, fighting off those injuries, looking good once again, gets the same amount of carries as Rashad White, outproduces Rashad White once again. So Bucky Irving, man, he is just so damn solid. Shout out if you have him in Dynasty. Shout out if you have him in a keeper league. He's going to be around for a long time. Just a very, he's just got that quickness to him, man. He's just a really good running back. Very, very quality running back. But the Titans, fifth worst against running backs. 25 for 97 against Chase Brown last week. Tank Bigsby went for 18 to 55. Chris Rodriguez, 13 for 94. And Brian Robinson, 16 for 103. So the Commanders absolutely abused them on the ground. So yeah, it's a pretty good matchup for Jonathan Taylor. And you could say, like, maybe it's a redemption week for Jonathan Taylor. After that freaking play last week, he probably is going to be, want to really go out there and have a nice game. But do you sit him or do you start him rather over Bucky Irving? And the Cowboys against the run, about middle of the pack. They held Chuba Hubbard to 10 to 32 last week. Did a fairly decent job to Chase Brown, 14 for 58, but still 4 yards per carry, and then 6 for 65 and a touchdown on the ground. Tyrone Tracy also scored against them. They limited Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. Joe Mixon had a 100-yard day against them. Saquon just 14 for 66. Bijan 19 for 86. So, Bucky should have a good game. The question is who's going to have the better game. And I kind of I think I got to go with Bucky Irving, as crazy as it sounds. Maybe it doesn't sound crazy. I mean, Bucky's kind of been the better running back, right? So this year, I mean, Taylor still has that notoriety of being that top elite running back, but he had that fantasy RB1 season, but really hasn't been the same since. So it's a great matchup once again. Good game script against Tennessee. He could certainly have a big game. And then Bucky also, he's a little bit tricky because he's got all these injuries. Like 2 weeks ago, he got hurt, in the first quarter and gave you next to nothing. So monitor his health. Both guys are very solid this week, I would say. Maybe in a strange way, I'd say Taylor has a little bit more upside. Maybe, but I think I would go with Bucky Irving. He's just been the better running back of late. That's a very close call, man. Stay with us all week. Ask the other guys what they think as well. Get a good consensus there. Thanks for the question, buddy. Shadows is wicked, says Lutz McManus or Will Ricard. Denver takes on the Chargers. Chargers defense not playing nearly as good as they did early in the season, getting torched down the stretch. I don't know what's going on there, but something's been figured out, it seems, amongst the coaching group of the NFL. Ricard, been pretty solid. They cut my boy, John Parker Romo, tossed him to the side, said, hey, good job, Parker Romo, but bringing back Ricard. He goes to Seattle. Again, that could be shitty weather, so monitor that. And then McManus. Let's see. They take on New Orleans. So, yeah, I think I'd go with McManus. They're home in Green Bay, but the game script is great. So if the weather is money in Green Bay this week, I like McManus. But come back to us again. Mike is kind of the kicker guy. He does a rankings on the kickers. Go check out his Twitter at the FF Realist. He listed his top 12 kickers for the week. But I would say with that game script, if the weather's good in Green Bay, McManus looks pretty good to me. Al, our boy, says, hello, everyone. Jared, our boy, says, hopefully the Giants don't win versus Atlanta and screw up their draft. Thoughts on the Yanks getting Bellinger? Um, I know a lot of people don't like Bellinger. He obviously started out hot in his career, and it's kind of hasn't been the best, but no, he's a lefty. And, he could hit a bunch of homers there in that park. So I don't mind it. I think it's a good deal. I'm not gonna hate it. I'm not gonna hate on it. You know, I think it's decent. I don't really know what to expect, but you never know, man. When people put on the pinstripes, sometimes their careers change for the better. That's happened in many, many cases. Cliff says, "What defense should I stream this week?" And I will put you to make sure you get on the Faceoff Sports Network channel, like, subscribe, share, hit that like button, and go watch Pete's defensive streaming video, and check out Pete's rankings on his defenses as well. But I would say between the Cardinals, Falcons, or Colts, Cardinals get Carolina. Bryce Young playing better football. The Falcons, I mean, they're going to have another great matchup this week. And they're playing for position. Arizona's kind of playing for it too. And then we had this also with the Colts. But I think I'm going to go with Atlanta again. I think I'm going to go with Atlanta against. If it's Tim Boyle, I'm definitely going with Atlanta, 100%. Tim Boyle is terrible. But even like I said, even if Tim Boyle doesn't start, you're going to get freaking Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, who's burning. He's constantly burning the cutlets. And then you got freaking Drew Lock. The quarterback situation is an absolute disaster in New York. Edson Garces says Jalen Hurts or Jaden Daniels. Full PPR. Well, that doesn't really matter for a quarterback, right? Well, Washington versus Philly this week. Interesting. These two teams played earlier in the year, and I think Jaden was a little bit banged up in that game. I'm just trying to pull that matchup up real quick. See what these two did in the last matchup. 26-18 on November 14th. Yeah, Jaden was a little bit banged up in that game. I don't think he was fully healthy. He threw for 191, a touchdown. He only ran for 18 yards. Terry McLaurin only had one catch for 10 yards in that game. Again, they weren't really moving McLaurin around. They don't really do that, but I noticed, and I saw that last week, he moved from the left side to the right side. So maybe they're trying to play matchups a little bit more with him, at least get him on the other side against an inferior corner. Move him to the slot, get him in motion a little bit, but, I don't think Cliff's going to really do that. And then Hurts in this matchup, 221, no touchdowns. But he did, have 39 yards and a rushing touchdown. So it wasn't really a great game for Hurts either. And then Hurts, comes out in the press conference after the game, says, this is what you guys wanted. Obviously Devonta Smith has a big game. AJ Brown has a big game. Hurts throws for 250, runs for another one. So I love Jaden Daniels. And I hope that they pull this upset this week over the Eagles at home. But I still think I got to give the advantage to Hurts. The Eagles defense is just kind of tricky, and he's still a rookie. And, Noah Brown's hurt. Not to say that's a huge injury, but, besides McLaurin, the weapons aren't great. Zach Ertz is banged up too a little bit. You got freaking Zacchaeus, and who the hell else were they throwing out there last week? Diami Brown was the second highest receiver in routes under McLaurin. So it's not great. When you have Devonta Smith, Saquon, AJ Brown, I think you got to go with Jalen Hurts there. Jared Fortin says, rank these running backs, Miller, Ford, Vidal, and Madison. Jeez, Ford gets Dorian Thompson Robinson now. Vidal's terrible, so I would put him last. I mean, he's doing nothing. So he's last for sure. Kendray's quarterback situation is horrible too. And then Madison, he could have Ritter. So all these guys are freaking horrible. Are you talking about this week, Jared? If it's for this week, again, it depends on, if Aiden O'Connell's starting. I think if Aiden O'Connell started, but I still think I'd probably go with Ford. I think I would go with Ford. Now we may see Donta Foreman this week. The return of Donta Foreman. This guy just freaking won't go away, and then he's coming back again this week. So we will see probably Donta Foreman back, or maybe Pierre Strong against Cincinnati. So, Dorian Thompson Robinson might not be terrible this week against that Cincinnati defense. And maybe Ford catches 3, 4, 5 passes. So it's not terrible. Again, I want to see if Aiden O'Connell can get out there this week, because if he can against Jacksonville, I do not mind Madison. Kendrick Miller, I love. I think he's talented. As far as talent, I put him up there number 1. But the situation with the quarterbacks, maybe Rattler's not terrible. I mean, he's definitely. I thought Haener was actually looked better in the spot starts, because Rattler had that one decent game against Tampa, and then he looked horrible after that. But they get Green Bay. That's not really a great matchup. So I don't know what Kendrick Miller is going to do in that game. Is he going to catch passes? I think I'd go with Ford right now. But again, come back later in the week and ask the rest of the guys and myself, and we'll kind of recirculate that. But right now, I would slightly say Ford. Jamie says, did you hear they're bringing back the TV show Friday Night Lights with a whole new cast? Also bringing back that football comedy Blue Mountain State. Never heard of that. I was heard of Friday Night Lights. And I know Anthony will be happy about that. Speaking of Anthony, he is working under the, behind the scenes. He's kind of like, the producer of the show. We will announce when he's returning, but he's doing a lot behind the scenes right now. So just stay patient. Our boy is good, and he'll be back soon. Shadow is wicked. Says pick 2, 1 receiver, 1 flex. Marvin Harrison Jr., Adam Thielen, Quentin Johnson, Rashad White, Travis Etienne. Thanks in advance. Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., man, he's just so hard to rely on right now. So 1 receiver, Marvin Harrison, Thielen, Quentin Johnson. Carolina is playing Arizona, so they're playing against each other. So I mean, it seemingly should be a nice matchup for Marvin Harrison Jr., although J.C. Horn, I guess. What does Jamie think about that matchup with Harrison and J.C. Horn? And then Carolina with Thielen against Arizona. At home, not bad. So Thielen has kind of been their best receiver. It looks like Leggett is probably not going to play this week. That means more Jalen Coker, more David Moore, I guess. But Thielen should be the number 1 guy. And then you got Quentin Johnson, who scores again last week. And Quentin Johnson against Denver. Nah, I don't really like that one. Not crazy about that one. Trying to see what Quentin Johnson did last time against Denver. Let's see. October 13th, 23-16, Chargers W. And Quentin Johnson had 3 catches for 22 yards. Fehoko had 2 catches for 44. So I think I go with Thielen, man. I think Thielen's the guy. Trey McBride's eating up all those freaking he's their number 1 receiver. He's just going off every single week. Just can't get in the damn end zone. And then Harrison, it's just not reliable. So it's a good matchup, against an inferior defense, but I think I'd go with Adam Thielen there. Thanks for the question, buddy. James Dirk says, I have Hurts, Caleb, and Drake May in Superflex. Penix worth stashing. I'd be dropping Jalen Warren. 100%. I think so. I think it's worth a stash, and you don't want other people to get him as well that could possibly need him. Now, do you need Jalen Warren? Could you get by without him? He's kind of eating into Najee's touches right now a little bit. It's almost like a 50-50, especially last week. And with Pickens out, their offense is not looking the best, though. So, I mean, if you could drop Jalen Warren, I'd go for it 100%. Mike Android says, Week 16, I'm wondering about either Tua, Jared Goff, Cooper Rush, or, dare I say, Michael Penix Jr. Yeah, dare you say, man. That would be bold. It really comes down to, have you seen enough of Penix, play in college, and do you believe in the talent? I mean, I think he could have a decent game. It's just the unknown. It really is the unknown. But anyway, Tua, Jared Goff, Cooper Rush. Let's see who we got this week. Tua takes on the Niners at home. Jared Goff goes to Chicago and takes on the Bears. And then Cooper Rush, not a bad matchup against Tampa, but there's no way you could start him over freaking Tua and Jared Goff. So I don't know about Tua, man. He, last week was a shit show. Now he returns home this week. Maybe it's a little bit better, but I think you stick with Jared Goff. Now the Bears kind of play the Lions kind of tight. If you guys remember last year, they had them beat in that first game. I don't know if you guys remember this, but then Eberflus got way too conservative and they blew the lead. And then the second game, Chicago really slowed down Goff. I think they picked them off like maybe 4 or 5 times between those two games, or turned them over 4 or 5 times between those two games. But let's go back to that Thanksgiving game and see what Goff did again. 221, 2 touchdowns. And I could see the same thing, just around there, 250, 2 touchdowns. But the Bears defense seems like it's getting a little bit worse. They're getting a little bit more demoralized. Their offense isn't really doing anything. I mean, they're still a pretty decent defense, but just not that defense. I think they're a little bit better early in the year, especially the way they finished last season. Eberflus, I think losing him obviously hurts them from the defensive side. As a head coach, probably not. But from the defensive point of view, a little bit. But I still think I go with Goff there. Tua could have a nice game, certainly, and maybe a little bit of a bounce back at home. Terrible game last week against the Texans, but Niners last 8 weeks still third best against quarterbacks. So let's go Jared Goff there. Thanks for the question, Mike. TS says Falcons, Cardinals, Bengals, or Bills defense for the championship match. Are you talking about next week? Are we talking about week 17? Are we talking about this week? If we're talking about for the Super Bowl, which is week 17, the Bills, I would say the Bills, probably. They're going to get the Jets. That's not a bad one. Atlanta is going to take on Atlanta is going to take on Washington. So I would go with the Bills over that. Cardinals take on the Rams. And then the Bengals take on Denver. So yeah, I'd go with the Bills if it is the Super Bowl. If it's this week, I think again, I'm going back to Atlanta, going against the Giants. Buffalo against New England is close. I guess you could go there too. I mean, I kind of want to go there. I don't really want to trust Atlanta, but again, I said that last night. I thought Minnesota would be the better play, and I think Atlanta had like double the points that Minnesota had. Minnesota's been one of the best fantasy defenses all year. Cincy gets Dorian Thompson Robinson. That's not a bad one. But I still think I'd rather go Atlanta over Cincy. And then the Cardinals this week against Carolina. No, I'd go with either Atlanta or Buffalo. And you probably would just go with Buffalo, because I would go with Buffalo the rest of the way. Chris Geneva says PPR flex start 2. DK, Shakir, McMillan, Ford, Keenan Allen. DK has been bad. Very, very bad. He's just not doing anything of note. Shakir been solid. He's one of the consistent options in that Bills offense. Cooper, guy had what, 14 targets last week, no targets. He played less, he ran less routes than Matt Collins. And even Keon Coleman, who came back from injury after being out 5 weeks, ran more routes. So I don't know what's going on with Cooper. I don't know, I don't know what they're doing with him. Like, isn't this the time to kind of utilize him? Or are they just waiting? Like, is he like their secret weapon? Or he's just not fully ready yet? It's probably what it is. He's just not fully entrenched into the offense. All these other guys had all the offseason, all the season to get, accustomed to this offense. And Cooper got traded, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. So he must still be learning. So they're just kind of slowly building him in. Could that change this week? I don't know. But Shakir is one of the most solid options. McMillan is hot right now. Jerome Ford is going to get all the touches with Nick Chubb with the broken foot. We'll see if Dante Foreman factors in there, but you got Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So, how much is that offense really going to move the ball? And then you got Keenan Allen against Detroit. And Keenan Allen is going to get a lot of targets. He scored again last week. Caleb's going to have to throw a lot. So I think my initial start here is Keenan Allen. And I want to say Shakir against New England. But again, that could be a game where, Buffalo is just running a ton in the second half. So it's not the best game script as far as, passing for Buffalo. Seattle is going to take on Minnesota. But again, DK, he's not doing anything. But Minnesota is letting up a lot of points to receivers. About 5th, 6th worst in the league. So maybe DK can get off this week. It's a decent upside pick. He's kind of due for a big game. But again, we have Sam Howell. I'm forgetting about Sam Howell. It looks like Geno's out, and I think he's going to be out. Sam Howell. So forget DK. Let's go with Shakir and Keenan Allen. If you wanted to throw Ford in there for a safe floor, I don't mind it. But I think you go with Keenan and Shakir. McMillan is not a bad option either. He's been hot. They're going against Dallas. He's getting the targets. He's scoring every week. That's not a bad one either. But I'm going to go with Shakir and Keenan Allen. Very close. Come back the rest of the week. Ask the rest of the guys. Appreciate it, Chris. Kyler or Jaden Daniels? I'm going Jaden Daniels. I know Kyler's got a good matchup this week against Carolina. But I don't know with Kyler, man. Like, he's just not getting it done. He's simply not getting it done. And we just saw Cooper Rush have a really nice game. So Kyler could have a great week this week. He could. I just feel like I trust Jaden a little bit more with money on the line. He's healthier this week against Philly than he was the first matchup. So I give a slight edge to Jaden, although, Kyler is a little bit intriguing this week. I'm not going to lie. Carolina obviously is a very nice matchup. They let Cooper Rush throw for 3 touchdowns. They did hold Jaden Hurts to 108 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he did run for 59 on them too. So they are letting up a lot of rushing yards to quarterbacks. Now I'm looking at it. Jalen Hurts ran for 59. Mahomes ran for 60. Daniel Jones ran for 26. Jaden ran for 50. Mariota ran for 34. So Kyler could get it done on the ground a little bit in this one and help you. If you wanted to go with Kyler, I don't hate it. He should have a decent game. Like, there's no reason he should not throw at least 2 touchdowns in this game. He's just been so inconsistent, so hard to trust. So it's very close, man. I would say maybe Kyler's got a higher ceiling. I just think I maybe trust Jaden Daniels a little bit more. Very, very close. Tough decision. NRB 75 says, would anyone pick up Penix and start him? Depends on who you got, man. Chris Geneva says, keep Steelers D or drop for either Colts or Packers. Pittsburgh is taking on Baltimore this week. So not the best matchup. And the Packers, again, they get New Orleans, right? So I think that's the defense I'm going with. Pittsburgh next week gets Kansas City. So, yeah, go with the Packers, man. You need to advance. That's the move. I'd go with Green Bay this week. NRB says I'm dropping Garendo for either Penix or Green Bay defense. Garendo. Why are you dropping Garendo? No. I mean, did he's is he hurt? He's healthy, right? Like he played last week, so I don't think you want to do that. I mean, unless you can afford to do it, I don't see why you want to do that. Silent says, "Are we confident starting Drake London with this quarterback change?" I wouldn't say I'm confident, but I would say I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess you could say. Again, they're playing the Giants. It's a good matchup. I think Penix should get some time to throw. I think he could be decent in this game. So I'm not going to be like overly confident on it, but I think he could have a decent game. So, depends what your options are. I think London could give you 10 points as a safe floor. GLVS VZ says, question 1, choose one flex and one receiver. Hopkins, Downs, Edwards, Waddle. Question 2, if Njoku plays, should I flex Mark Andrews, have Njoku at tight end, and who should be my wide receiver? Waddle, Downs, or Downs? Waddle, Downs, or Downs? All right, so one flex and one receiver. Hopkins, Downs, Gus Edwards, Waddle. Well, we don't know about Waddle. We don't know if he's playing. And Gus Edwards stinks, so you can't go with Gus Edwards. Forget about Gus Edwards. So it looks like right now, man, based off your options, I think you got to go with Hopkins and Downs. Come back rest of the week. Question 2 says, if Njoku plays, should I flex Mark Andrews and have Njoku at tight end, or should my wide receiver be Waddle, Downs, or Down? I think I go with the 2 tight ends. Lucius Varenis 44 says, evening, need a defense for this week. Would you go Falcons, Indy, or Cincy? Was going Indy, but Sam saw Levis got benched. Again, going back to the Falcons. We're going back to the Falcons, man. Yep. Against, if it's Tim Boyle, 100%. Jose Rodriguez says 2 running backs. Connor, Mixon, Dowdle, Garendo, Charbs, Ford, Hall. Connor's definitely one. Mixon, not a great matchup for Mixon. Dowdle, he's been money. A lot of the matchups have been pretty Swiss for him, though. But he's been money. Not a terrible matchup against Tampa. Garendo takes on Miami. And then you got Charbs. Jeez, you got a lot of running backs here, man. Charbs against Minnesota. Ford, forget about Ford. Breece Hall against the Rams. Breece didn't do much last game. We saw Isaiah Davis mix in. Breece gets that last touchdown. I think they were just letting him score. So Connor is one. I want to say Mixon just because he's been the guy. He's kind of the guy that brought you to the dance, right? The matchup is not great against Kansas City, though. But I think it's hard to sit Mixon. So, shit. I would say definitely Connor. Then it's either Mixon, Dowd, or Garendo. I would leave Charb and Ford and Hall on the bench. But come back rest of the week, man. We'll re-answer that one for you. We'll nail that one down solid, Jose. Appreciate it. GLVZ says, question 1. I already got this one. Edson Garces says, thank you for answering, engaging with us. I can't thank you enough. Thank you, man. We appreciate you guys coming on, watching us, giving us your time, giving us your respect. Appreciate that. Just make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And if you guys are watching on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. Head over to the YouTube. We do have a jersey giveaway as well that we will be doing, as you see here. Drop this comment. Christmas, we will be displaying it, the winner, on 12/25. So all you got to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, send us proof of subscription on social media, or email us at fffaceoff@gmail.com. Winner gets their choice of an NFL jersey from Fanatics, $129 value. And James Dirk says, pick up Strange or drop Otten. Pick up Strange and drop Otten. I mean, at this point, Otten's not doing much. Strange is hot. Ingram's out. He's on the IR. Bucks up 7 in the NBA Cup. I don't mind it, buddy. I don't mind, James. I don't mind it. I really don't. I don't think it's a bad move. Think it could work out for you. Jacksonville takes on the Raiders, second worst against tight ends, like I stated earlier. So don't hate it, buddy. Could it work out? Sure. Could it not work out? Sure. But I think you're doing the right thing, kind of taking a chance, a little bit more upside. Again, Oden's not doing anything. Ever since Evans came back, McMillan's kind of been that second guy, with Evans back in. So, yeah, I don't mind it, buddy. All right. Couple more questions here, and we'll wrap this baby up. Galactic Ghoul says, are we running Dr. Strange or Njoku at tight end and have PPR? Njoku is banged up with Dorian Thompson-Robinson making quarterback debut. Well, we've seen Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's been terrible. Last year we saw a lot of him, and he was horrible. He was good in the preseason. He was good at UCLA, but, just a different story in the NFL. So, yeah, it's hard to trust. And Njoku's banged up. Will he even play? We don't know. So right now it's Strange. Edson Garza says, I want to make an attempt to grab forward to block my opponent. Is it time to drop either Keon Coleman, Travis Etienne, or Tank Dell? Which one? Well, your opponent needs a running back. I wouldn't drop Etienne. Again, he took back the carries from Tank Bigsby the week before. Tank Bigsby had more. So it's like a hot hand thing over there in Jacksonville. But I'd still hold on to Etienne. Tank Dell he's been doing nothing, like absolutely nothing. So if you have good receivers, I kind of rather have Keon Coleman with Josh Allen. I know Keon Coleman's going to be kind of hard to predict. But I mean, again, he ran more routes than freaking Cooper. So it's like him and Shakir running the most routes, all that time off. He only really had that one big catch on that, what was that? The fastest throw ever in history by Josh Allen. This guy is just breaking records one way or another every single week. He's just absolutely incredible to watch. Him and Lamar are, two most entertaining quarterbacks in the league, and the best quarterbacks in the league this year. Allen should win that MVP. He's like minus 900 now. So yeah, I don't mind it, man. I would say maybe Tank Dell would be the guy to drop. If you need a receiver, I mean, if your depth's terrible, maybe you drop ETN, but I don't really want to drop ETN. Tyler Sperry says, our boy Tyler says, I'm trying to find a flex and a wide receiver too. McMillan, Coker, Jaden Reed. Pick 2 if Walker plays. Who's Walker? Kenneth Walker? I don't know who we're talking about here. A flex and a wide receiver 2, McMillan, Coker, Jaden Reed. I'd go with McMillan and Reed. I can't trust Coker. I know he did a good game last week, but I would still go with McMillan and Reed there. I'm just afraid of Penix because it's his first start. Everyone is afraid their first start. Yeah, it's just he could be really good. I mean, he could be gearing to go. Again, he's an older guy, 24, 25. He's like an old school quarterback. You give him time in the pocket, he's accurate. He throws a really good ball. So we're going to see if the Falcons were right about taking Penix, early in that draft when everybody was bashing him. Interestingly enough, that was the same thing with Kirk Cousins when, RG3, Kirk Cousins was taken in that same draft along with him too. And people were wondering, why are you taking two quarterbacks? But why? I mean, now that I think about it more and more, maybe it makes sense, to take two quarterbacks because it's so hard to find a good quarterback. Take your chance. But again, they paid Cousins all this money. That was the mistake. So it's almost like they hedged their bet with Penix. So why not? People hedge their bets all the time. So yeah, they spent all that money, but they're hedging their bet with Penix. We'll see if it works out, right? And quarterback obviously is the most important position in football. TS says this week, so that we were talking about the defenses earlier. My league ends this week. That's interesting. Yeah. So again, those two, I think it was Buffalo and Atlanta between those two. I maybe Atlanta has a little more upside. Buffalo is obviously the much better defense, and they could have a very nice game against Drake May as well. Amari couldn't play due to menopause. Yeah, he was out there, didn't get a target, and his routes were down too. So again, I think it's just he's just still getting slowly accustomed to the offense. They had to use him a little bit more last week because Keon Coleman and Kincaid were both out. Galactic Ghoul says Broncos D or Falcons D. Broncos are the top defense and versus the Colts, who seem depleted. No, they played the Colts last week. Galactic. And remember Nick Bonito ending my fantasy day with that freaking Adonai Mitchell horrendous play. Nick Bonito got like 20 points on that play in the IDP league, whatever it was, something crazy, 17 points. That was the game that swung. That was the play that swung it. They take on the Chargers this week. Cool. And then Atlanta. I'm going back to Atlanta. Again, Tim Boyle, he might be out there. So there's an injury. It's going to go back to Tim Boyle. So let's go Atlanta. A-Rich or Penix? Very, very interesting question. And Indy, they get Tennessee this week. I'm going with A-Rich. I'm going with Anthony Richardson. I know, his completion percentage is horrible, but he'll get the rushing. I think I just got to go with Richardson. I got to see what Penix can do first. So I'm going to go with the known. Penix obviously is the better throwing quarterback. It's not even close. So if you wanted to go with Penix go with your gut, man. I don't mind it, but it could get a little ugly. You don't know. You really don't know. We've never seen him start in an NFL game before. It could be like him against Michigan in the national championship game. So I would go with A-Rich there personally. CD or Devontae Adams? Jeez, what a question. I mean, can you get any tougher than that? I mean, you got two studs there. I mean, Devontae, obviously CD's been the guy, and then Devontae's just going nuts down the stretch here with his boy Aaron Rodgers against the Rams, which should be a high-scoring game. Check on the weather in New York. And then Dallas gets Tampa. Jeez. I don't know, man. Flip a coin. I would say if the weather is good in New York, I'm going to go with Devontae. If it's a little bit suspect, 20-mile-an-hour winds, a little bit of rain, then let's go CD. Home against Tampa. But either one, man, either option is great. It's a good situation to have. Penix or Wilson already starting Goff, two quarterback league. And Russ Wilson, no more Pickens again today in practice. Pittsburgh taking on Baltimore. Baltimore not very good against fantasy quarterbacks. We saw a couple weeks ago an absolute shootout between these two teams, but no Pickens. Maybe that changes things a little bit. But either way, Russ is going to be tossing it a rock. They're 6.5-point dogs. We only have a 45 total in this one. Sorry, it wasn't a high scoring game. It was, what the hell am I thinking? I'm thinking about the Bengals game. Sorry. 18-16 was the last game. Russ did not do much in this game. 205 yards, no touchdown. So there is really no upside with Russ Wilson, especially without Pickens. He could be decent, but it's a divisional game. They kind of both know each other. It could be a higher scoring game this time around. If Pickens plays, I'll go with Russ. If Pickens is out, I'll go with Penix. It's crazy. It may sound. Galactic Ghoul back again says Broncos or Falcons D this week. Again, Broncos are the top. Oh, I already answered that. We said Falcons. I meant Hopkins, not Downs twice. LOL. Edson Garza says, in your personal confident opinion, give us league winners at each position. LOL. Thank you. Jeez. Well, Josh Allen's the league winner, right? Lamar Jackson's a league winner. And if you look at, I mean, most of my teams that have been elevated is because of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. So people say, don't take your quarterbacks too early. Don't get the studs like Josh Allen. I mean, I've been drafting this guy since he's basically a rookie. And I remember I used to get him like, I don't know, 14th round. I got him in a 4th round of a dynasty draft. You know, there's a lot of people that just thought he was going to do nothing. And then every year I would just take him until, you know, that last year it was like the highest they ever went to quarterbacks, like 2nd round. And then it fell back down to 4th round. But I still grabbed a lot of Allen. Now he's going to go back up to the 3rd round again. So I would say Allen, Jackson, Burrow. Obviously, those are the biggest quarterbacks this week. And then, you know, for running back, I'm trying to look. Could you say Penix is going to be a league winner? I mean, it's possible. Maybe it comes out of the woodworks, out of nowhere, just starts throwing 3-4 touchdowns. They're left and right. Possible. Maybe Kendrick Miller goes nuts. But no. You know, running back, Chase Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs now with no Montgomery out of the way. Certainly looks like a league winner. You know, now Vaki and Craig Reynolds are going to be in the mix, but it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs for the most part. But you never know. This kid Vaki, who was like a hybrid defensive player, offensive player in college, he might show out a little bit. This might be a chance for him to show something. Even Craig Reynolds wasn't bad in his spot starts down the stretch. And then James Conner against Carolina. That could be a monster game this week. At receiver, Puka. He just continues to get it done. Devontae Adams down the stretch. I mean, I don't know if he's going to slow down. Terry McLaurin, I feel like, is due for a monster game. Can he be a league winner? Will he go up against Philly? Probably not. But yeah, Devontae and Puka, I would say at receiver. Of course, Jamar Chase. Lad McConkey could be interesting. Brian Thomas Jr., he could be a league winner. I mean, the way I remember watching, you know, all his routes from last year in college and watching him in Neighbors, and I was just saying, wow, I think Thomas might be better. I mean, this kid, you know, he should have been drafted higher in the draft for sure. He should have over Dunze, possibly over Neighbors. I know, obviously, I mean, he's doing with Mac Jones, right? It's not like his quarterback situation is that great either. So I think Thomas, man, there's just something about this kid. His top end speed is just a little bit ridiculous. He's a bigger receiver, and his route running looks more crisp than Neighbors as well. Neighbors is a freak athlete, obviously. He's got a great career ahead of him. But I do think Thomas could potentially be a better receiver the rest of the way. And then at tight end, Trey McBride just continues to get it done. And what happens if he gets into the freaking end zone? You know, he still hasn't scored a freaking touchdown. And hey, maybe Brenton Strange is a game winner now. Bowers should get back on track this week against Jacksonville, especially if O'Connell comes back. If O'Connell comes back, that's going to be huge. Desmond Ridder, man. If he's out there, actually, forget about Bowers. I'm worried about Bowers. Desmond Ridder looked terrible. Terrible. He just cannot get it going. Thanks for your interesting little question there. Edson, is Ford worth getting? Same league. Yeah, I mean, it's always worth snatching up talent that's on the waiver wire, especially if you have some waste to drop. You know, you always want to optimize your teams 100%, Tyler. Rudy Oud says Jordan Love versus the Saints, but neutral pass rate has been atrocious and game script favors Jacobs, or Stafford versus the Jets. Yeah, the game script does favor, you're right, does favor Jacobs. But, we still, and Love doesn't look like he's playing as good as he was last year. Wow, Milwaukee 80-66 in the NBA Cup. Taking care of business here. Yeah, Stafford against the Jets. Again, I think it might come down to weather in either case. We're going to be playing in Green Bay in December, and we're going to be playing in New York in December. So, let's see what the weather looks like. But again, the Jets defense, last 8 weeks, they haven't been good. Mac Jones threw for 290. If they couldn't stop Mac Jones last week, what's Matt Stafford going to do? Tua threw for 331. Richardson threw for 272. Kyler threw for 266. Russ threw for 260. So I think Stafford, I think I'd give the slight edge to Stafford, although I'm still waiting for that like Jordan Love explosion game. And like this could be the type of game where their defense just gives him the ball so much. So yeah, it could be a Jacobs game, but he could throw 3-4 touchdowns maybe in this game as well. But you know what? I'll go with Stafford. But again, let's pay attention to the weather. Thanks for the question, Rudy. Tyler says, thank you guys. You are one of the most respectful people out there. Appreciate it, brother. Tank Dell, is that who you consider dropping? Yeah, I don't mind dropping Tank Dell. If you need a running back, if your receivers are okay, I'm good. Forever Eagles says, how's your day going? I have A.J. Brown as my wide receiver 1. Not sure who to input as my wide receiver 2. I'm having a pretty good day, actually. Woke up feeling pretty good. Sometimes you wake up feeling terrible. Sometimes you wake up feeling good. Today, I woke up feeling pretty damn good. So I appreciate that. Wire 2, I have Kupp, Pickens, Ladd, Jawan Jennings, or Jameson, half PPR. We don't know if Pickens is playing. Jawan Jennings, I'm not thrilled. Not thrilled with his matchup this week against Miami. Cooper Kupp, the donut last week, but we just talked about the Jets, defense falling off a cliff, down the stretch here without Salah, a little bit overrated to start. So, I would, and Ladd, very, very, I love Ladd, but do you start him over Cooper Kupp taking on Denver, right? Chargers playing Denver this week. Yeah. And he had a decent game last time. I think 40 yards against Denver, but he's playing better now than earlier in the year. So it would be between those guys. I would leave Jameson and Jennings out of it. I don't think Pickens is going to play. If Pickens plays, I'm going with Pickens. It's going to be Cooper Kupp and Pickens for me. I'm sorry, it would be Pickens over Cooper Kupp. But since Pickens is going to play, I would say either Kupp or McConkey, and I'll give a slight lean to Kupp in that one. Appreciate the question. Forever Eagles. Tyler Sperry says, I was a Dell owner and dropped him 5 weeks ago. I have Charbonnet. Sorry, Kenneth Walker. Figured that. Yeah, Dell has been frustrating. Taylor Peakman says, Knicks or Goff. Goff against the Bears and Knicks against the Chargers. And, the Chargers again. I don't know what's going on. Let me see last 4 weeks, what they're looking like against quarterbacks. Yeah, about 10th worst. So, they're falling back. Mayfield torches them up for 288 and 4 touchdowns. Mahomes 210 and a touchdown. Burrow 3 touchdowns against them. But still, it might be a tricky matchup for Knicks. And he struggled a little bit last week. Could he bounce back this week? Sure. But the Chargers are probably going to want to bounce back too. They're going to be a little bit more focused, I would expect as well. I want to see what Knicks did in that first matchup. Trying to recall here. And that is the Thursday night game this week. Denver Chargers in LA. 42 total. Chargers favored by 3. Chargers won the first matchup in Denver 23-16. Knicks 216 throwing, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He also ran for 61 yards. Chargers are letting up some running. Kyler ran for 64 on him. Will Levis ran for 41. Even Mayfield had 25 yards. But I like Goff. I'm going to go with Goff there, man. Just the weapons, the offense he plays in. I'm going to go with Goff. But again, pay attention to the weather. That's a big concern, now. With all these freaking cold weather stadiums, you got to pay attention to the weather. The most concerning thing about the weather is heavy rain and high winds, and like not just gusts. Like if they say gusts 20 miles or 25, that's not really a big deal. But if it's sustained like above 20 miles an hour, then you got to be a little bit concerned. Anything under that sustained is not really a big deal. SL Hazard says full PPR, Worthy versus Houston or Dell at KC. We're going Worthy, man. Worthy, getting the most routes. He's running the ball, another rushing touchdown. He's got 7 touchdowns on the year now. So we'll see if Mahomes gets out there. I think he will. But even if Wentz is out there, it's not terrible. And that may even incline Andy Reid to try to use Worthy more. So, I don't mind it. I don't mind going with Worthy there. Tank Dell, once again, he's just not doing anything. He's not, it's just not happening. It's not happening for the Texans offense as a whole, really. And CJ Stroud. Tyler Sperry says, if Walker plays, I will start Charbonnet. Got you. Benji Gutierrez says, start Sutton on Thursday or wait for Pickens for wide receiver 2. No, you got to go with Sutton. You can't wait for Pickens. Again, he didn't practice today unless he practices in full tomorrow and practices Thursday, and they say he's looking good. Otherwise, you got to go with Sutton, and that's a great option to fall back. I know he wasn't really doing much last game, but he caught that touchdown late, kind of salvaged the day. So yeah, and I like that the fact that the Bucs are kicking the shit out of Oklahoma State. This could be like a coming of age game for the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously, Doc Rivers comes over, he gets a lot of heat. Damian Lillard comes over last year. It didn't totally work out. Giannis was hurting the entire playoffs. So this team could be dangerous. This is a good team, man. You got Bobby Portis, Brooke Lopez. I'm happy they're winning this game. Michael Lopez says, don't forget to hit that like button. Appreciate it, Mike. Yes, and subscribe as well. If you guys want to send us a super chat, appreciate that as well. 'Tis the season. Jason Poole says, Jonnu or Kittle? If Kittle, who do I flex? Jonnu or BTJ? Well, if Kittle's out there, you got to go with Kittle. I mean, if you have Kittle, you got to go. I love Jonnu. He's having a good year. I don't really love Jonnu. Pete loves Jonnu. Pete was the one who actually called out Jonnu early in the year. He won our pizza bet with Jonnu's touchdown last week, and Jonnu scores another 6 touchdowns on the year for Jonnu Smith. Although that was Pete's original pick, and then he said, I don't want to do 6. I'll do 5. I said, all right, I'll do 5. I should have did 6, whatever. Anyway, go with Kittle, and BTJ is just too good. So all good options there, man. But I got to go Kittle and BTJ. SL Hazard says, I got Lamar Jackson in the 4th round. Are you talking dynasty? If that's, I'm in redraft this year. Yeah. I mean, Allen and Jackson are just lifting our fantasy teams up. So props to you, man. A Manster 23 says Cup or DJ Moore this week. Going Cup. Again, DJ Moore. I love DJ Moore. Always loved him ever since he came out. I didn't draft him that much when he was on Carolina because the quarterback play. Last year, he was probably my most highest owned receiver with Fields. It was one of my biggest stacks. It was a career year for Moore. And remember, Fields missed a month after the DN from the Vikings. Daniel Hunter. He freaking knocked Fields out for a month. Fields and Moore's numbers would have been, Moore's numbers would have been even more insane. He had to play with Tyson Bagent for a month. So that hurt his overall numbers. But we're going with Cup this week against the Jets. Again, pay attention to the weather in Chicago and New York. I'm going to keep reminding you guys about that. Hurts or Goff this week. I'm going to go with Hurts. iPod Touch Superfan says full PPR. BTJ, Neighbors, St. Brown, Nico. Need to sit one. Money, receivers all over the place. But I think I'm sitting Neighbors. Tim Boyle, forget about it. Fuck it. I could probably sit. Can't sit St. Brown. Can't sit Brian Thomas Jr. right now, and you can't sit Nico. So, yeah, I think I'm sitting Neighbors, man. Especially if Tim Boyle's going to be out there. No disrespect to Tim Boyle. I mean, the guy is a quarterback in the NFL. You know, props to him on a great career and making it there. But as far as quarterbacks in the league, he's probably the worst or one of the worst. Victor Duran says full PPR, need to start one. Jaden Reed, Odunze, Ray McLeod, or Josh Downs. Appreciate that question, Victor. All right, this is a tough one. Green Bay, once again, against Seattle. We saw Jaden Reed, against New Orleans. We saw Jaden Reed getting some carries. Are they going to really have to throw it a ton? Again, this could be a game where Jaden Reed just kind of goes off. They could get a ton of possessions. Odunze against the Lions. Again, Caleb's going to have to throw it a ton. Threw for 350 in the first matchup on Thanksgiving. Why can't it happen again at home? Who knows about the weather? So I would say both those guys over Ray McLeod. We don't know how Penix is going to look. Is Penix going to go after Ray McLeod? So I would say no. And then Josh Downs, with the way Richardson's throwing the ball, it's just going to be a little bit up and down for Josh Downs. I like Josh Downs. He's a good player. Again, another one of Pete's guys that he liked this year. But I would say it's close between Reed and Odunze. I think the game script favors Odunze more because they're just going to have to throw a lot more in this game, the Bears. So, and I'm kind of frustrated with Odunze because I wasn't really high on him coming out. He wasn't a great separator, but he was a great contested catch guy in college, and he's dropped a lot of those in the NFL. Like even yesterday, he dropped another touchdown he should have had. So he hasn't been great, but they may just have to throw a ton. But you got Keenan and you got DJ Moore in the way too. It's close, man. I would say between Jaden Reed and Odunze, come back the rest of the week and ask the other guys too if you can. I would go a slight edge for Odunze for a little bit more upside and a safer game script. But again, come back. Appreciate it, buddy. Jamie says start one, Brian Thomas, Terry McLaurin, or Russell Wilson. Interesting. That's fucking in a super flex. Brian, McLaurin didn't do anything against the Eagles last time. 1 catch for 10. Brian Thomas is freaking red hot right now. Even with Mac Jones against the Raiders. I don't really like Russ too much, but he should at least give you like 14 points. So he's the safest, obviously. I think BTJ has the most upside, but I think Russ is the safest. So I would probably go, 2. Okay. He says start 2. So I'm going with BTJ and Russ, even though I love Terry McLaurin. He's been an absolute stud. Did you guys see he could have had 2 more touchdowns or just a monster game, and just a couple that he just missed just out of his reach on a couple of those. Yao Ming says, hey, what's up, Yao? 7-7 out of China. I have both Kupp and Garrett Wilson. Which is the better stack, Stafford or Rodgers? Interesting. I would say you know what? I would say so you have the secondary receiver for both these quarterbacks. So Rodgers, Adams is his guy. And it's clear that Puka has taken a step up over Cooper Kupp. I kind of like Garrett Wilson this week against the Rams, but I do like Kupp too. That's a close one, buddy. That's tough to call. Jeez. You know what? I'm going to go with Stafford and Kupp slightly, but I could see Garrett Wilson having a monster day too. Very, very close there. Lucid Nick says, I'm in the semifinal. I have 4 running backs. Bijan is my main starter. I also have Aaron Jones, JT, and Isaac Guerrero. Which other 2 should I start out of them 3? Well, yep, Bijan is definitely one. Aaron Jones playing good football right now. Look good. looked very good, has looked really good the last 2 weeks. A little bit banged up, for those couple weeks. He was struggling. Cam Akers was coming in. Um, Bears, terrible against running back, the worst against running backs last 8 weeks. So we're sticking with oh, sorry, they're not playing the Bears this week. They just played the Bears. Um, Minnesota is taking on Seattle. Let's see. Yeah, Seattle about middle of the pack, but Jones has been hot. Pretty good matchup. So I would say Jones, and then you need one more out of JT and Isaac Correndo. And you know what? I'm going to go with a Jonathan Taylor redemption, somewhat of a redemption game. Going against him in a big spot in a semifinal this week, so hopefully not too nuts. But I think I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor against Tennessee. Correndo, takes on Miami. Miami about ninth best against running backs last 8 weeks rather. So yeah, let's go with Aaron Jones and Jonathan Taylor there. Thanks for the question. Lucid Nick says, oh, same question. Day's going good. Victor Durant said, agreed, bro. Thanks. I just hate that Reed don't play on first down because Packers run so much on first down, and Reed sucks at blocking. My wide receiver one is Tyreek, who I'm not even excited about. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict Reed, he's kind of like everybody's favorite, but look at Dobbs. Like it's Dobbs and Watson getting the most snaps and routes, and Reed's the third guy, and then Wicks is behind them. So that's why I said Odunze, with how much they're going to need to throw in that game script, even though I think Odunze's not my favorite rookie receiver, but he's had some big games this year. And he's going to play a lot too. So I think it gives you a little bit more chance for some higher points. Although Reed really could smash in that matchup too, just because they could just get so many possessions with that horrible quarterback play of New Orleans. Yao Ming says, thanks. I figure I can't go wrong with either side. Garrett did look frustrated when he wasn't getting the ball last game, but we'll see if A-Rod even looks his way. Yeah, I mean, him and Adams are like going down with a blaze of glory right now. Lucid Nick says, appreciate you. And then SL Hazard says, thanks, dude. Appreciate the insight. And you guys, thanks. Appreciate it. Make sure you're liking, subscribing. You guys can follow me if you want on Twitter at Fantasy Savvy. You see it there. So I appreciate that, guys. And we're about an hour 30. We got to everybody's questions. This is a waiver show, so I just like to go over the list of players that are obviously we talked a lot about Penix tonight. Aaron Rodgers is playing better football of late. I mean, he might be out there in your league too. And another good matchup against the Rams. Bryce Young playing good, but can you really rely on him? No. Aiden O'Connell, he might be back this week. No. Mason Rudolph, forget about it. Mac Jones, forget about it. Super flex leagues, obviously all these guys are in play. Carson Wentz, I don't know if he's going to play. So if he does play, I still wouldn't want to use him. So Penix, I feel kind of intrigued by. Like, I think he'd be my number one quarterback pickup, maybe Rodgers over him. I feel like Rodgers, 34% owned. Not too bad for Rodgers. And then obviously Penix is probably owned nowhere. Drake May, I'm surprised, only 13% owned. That's kind of low. Against Buffalo, not a great matchup. That's it for the quarterbacks. I don't see anything else significant. Dorian Thompson-Robinson these are all super flex guys. At running back, Jerome Ford is the big one, 41% owned already. Nick Chubb with the broken foot. So obviously that's a big pickup this week. Try to steal him from your opponents. Build depth. If you're thin at running back, you're strong at receiver. That's the guy you want to target. Kendre Miller now with Kamara with his groin injury. He might be out for the year. Now the quarterback situation is absolutely horrible. We talked a lot about Kendre Miller tonight. We talked a lot about Jerome Ford as well. But I like Kendre Miller's talent. This guy, he's got breakaway speed. Not many We'll see if that really applies to the NFL. In college, it applied at TCU. But I remember like Darrell Henderson had that at Memphis, and it didn't really show up as much in the NFL. But he does have good speed. He's got good size. He runs between the tackles well, so we see how he does in a bigger opportunity. If you're a Brees Hall owner, Isaiah Davis, it's possible, Brees doesn't make it out this week. We'll see. We saw Isaiah Davis play over Braylon Allen even last week. So Isaiah Davis is kind of getting the looks now. So that's another pickup, to add depth at the running back position. Again, if you're strong at receiver, you can afford to drop a receiver. We talked about, possibly dropping Tank Dell because the guy's doing absolutely nothing. But only if you're deep at receiver. Alexander Madison now with Sincere McCormick a little bit banged up. Ty Johnson is interesting. Like, is this guy a pickup right now? 2% owned. He's kind of like the Achane role of Buffalo. Like, doesn't do much rushing wise, but he's catching all these freaking passes. And he seems like the guy that catches all the Allen rollouts. Like, Allen rolls out and he's finding Ty Johnson's like his favorite guy. So, I mean, if you're absolutely desperate and, at running back and you need a guy, I mean, Ty Johnson is not the worst. I'd rather have him than Kamani Vidal. And then the Lions running backs, Craig Reynolds, we saw him, last year, about 7.6 yards per carry last year in 5 weeks. Had one rushing touchdown, but he's not a bad running back. And you're in this system. Now we'll see how much Vaki gets into that too. I would say Reynolds would have to be the guy at least this week, but you know what? Vaki could supplant him. So even if you got Vaki as a secondary pickup, it's not terrible. Again, this is more so desperate if you really, really need a running back or you were a David Montgomery owner, something like that. Vaki, again, that hybrid, he played both sides in college. Let's see what else here. Some stashes to think about. Corum, obviously, Davis, Algier. Those guys should be rostered. Kenneth Gainwell. That's an interesting one. Like with Barkley, a little bit banged up. I know he's going for that record, but the Eagles could clinch. They could potentially clinch this number 1 seed. Are they really going to want to overuse Barkley? So we may see a little bit more Kenneth Gainwell, potentially, maybe not so much this week, maybe a little bit more this week, but he had, he did a little bit this week, but maybe in the Super Bowl. So that's another one to think about. If you are a Barkley owner, 100% go grab Kenneth Gainwell. Even then, we might see Will Shipley, Patrick Taylor. I mean, he did nothing. Another lineup blimp I had this week. Thursday, I had a problem with a leak, and I couldn't I was rushing setting my lineups, and I accidentally left Patrick Taylor in one of my lineups. It was a disaster. So I had a couple disasters this week. This was the problem when you're in a million leagues like me. Khalil Herbert, forget about him. I don't even know why I'm mentioning him. Jalen McMillan at the receiver position, 8% owned. He's starting to get hot. Now the last couple of weeks he's been scoring 4 for 59 and 2 touchdowns on 7 targets last week. In week 14, and then last week 5 for 75 against the Chargers. So 3 touchdowns his last 2 games. Romeo Doubs, if he's out there in your league, again, this guy came back. He's up there. It's him and Watson running the most targets. And we saw that was an excellent catch he made in the back of the end zone. He's a quality receiver. Rashad Bateman, he's having a good year. He's having a pretty good year. 2 more touchdowns. 7 touchdowns this year. So not bad. Jalen Coker, not thrilled. Quentin Johnson, could you go back to the well there? Maybe. Malik Washington, are you intrigued by him with Waddle out? Not really. I'm not. Tim Patrick, forget about it. Not really, it's just going to be so inconsistent. Hollywood Brown, if he's out there in your league, it looks like Mahomes is coming back. I think he's a good stash at receiver. Again, just you guys, most of your teams are probably set. Your bench spots are probably pretty strong. But if you had some injuries, you want to optimize as much as possible, for this week, if not for the next week in the Super Bowl, because you may suffer some injuries this week. So think about next week. Cedric Tillman, possibly somebody dropped him, but maybe not because Dorian Thompson-Robinson he's not going to do anything unless they go back to Jameis again, which is possible. Like Dorian Thompson-Robinson could be scrambling around this week and get hurt. And then all of a sudden, Cedric Tillman's going off next week in the Super Bowl. Brenton Strange, we talked a lot about him this week on the show tonight. Wide receiver, tight end 8 when Ingram was hurt. Big game last week, 12 targets, 11 for 73. Mac Jones targeting him left and right. Good matchup this week against the Raiders, who are second worst against fantasy tight ends. Stone Smart, not another bad one with Will Dissly still. Stone Smart's got some speed. 5 for 50 last week. So not another bad tight end play. Noah Gray. He's got 5 touchdowns in weeks 11 through 15, 2 last week. If you need tight end help, why not? He's been very solid. They're running a lot of 12 personnel. He's getting involved. Maybe that changed a little bit with Hollywood back this week. We'll see. But Noah Gray's been solid, and he's kind of like he's the replacement for Travis Kelce, it seems like. But I'm sure they'll draft another tight end. Chig Okonkwo, starting to get it going. Season highs in targets and receptions last week, 10 targets, 8 receptions. And Chig has always been talented. Towards the end of the game, Josh Weil was getting some, but the game was kind of out of hand. When the game was in hand, it was the Chig show. And finally, they're starting to use this guy. So again, if you're desperate, not terrible. Defenses, we talked about it. The Bills, good matchup, but they're highly owned already. The Falcons, some people may have snatched them up previously. We talked about them a ton. Big match, great matchup against possibly Tim Boyle this week. We like the Packers a lot this week against the Saints. And even the Bengals this week is not bad against the Browns. Colts aren't bad either against Tennessee. And then they get the Giants next week too. So the Colts defense, if all those other defenses are kind of snatched up, the Colts defense is not a bad one to look at either. So that's it, guys. We got a couple more questions. People are still firing in. I'm at an hour 42. The producers are probably not going to like that I'm going so long here. Let's see. Let's just finish this baby up. Lucid says, what's your opinion on Malik Neighbors? Like I said earlier, I think Brian Thomas might be the better receiver. I think Malik Neighbors is a freak athletic player. I think he's got to work on his route running. I think he's got to work on the craft of being a receiver, but like his change of direction, his acceleration, he might have some of the best acceleration at receiver. He gets a better quarterback in there, a better offensive, system. He's going to have a good career. But I do think he's got to work on some things. Like Lab McConkey is probably a better route runner at this point off the jump. It's just that Malik is just, just so talented. Malik Neighbors over Cooper. Again, Cooper didn't get the snaps. So, I don't know what's going on. They're slowly building him in. Victor Durant says, last question, any random kickers you like? I know they are hard to predict, but I have Fairbairn from Houston right now, and I got to look at the weather. Let's see. Kickers. Kickers. He stumped me, bro. I got stumped on the kickers. It's my biggest weakness. Now, what I do with kickers, man, is I just kind of look at positive game scripts like McManus against the Saints, positive game scripts for their offense, a game where they're not going to be behind and they'll have to score touchdowns, won't be able to kick, good weather, dome games, or like shootouts, so anything like that, really, I think you can't go wrong as far as kickers. So like McManus, I mentioned him a couple times earlier. I don't mind. McLaughlin is not a bad one this week either against the Cowboys. Nice weather. And that's pretty much it. And then you got maybe Chad Ryland against Carolina. I know Prater's coming back soon, but still going with Chad Ryland. That's not a bad one either. So again, you're looking for positive game scripts. You're looking for good weather games or dome games. And I just don't like to take kickers that are on shitty offenses and they're not going to be playing from behind. If I know a team's going to be playing ahead and they're going to be in a good weather game, that's the kicker I'm going to go with. C. Xavier says, I have Kyron and Corum. Would you drop Corum for Spears or Miller now? Ooh, that's a tough one because if something happens to Kyron Williams, you're going to be kicking yourself. And I know there's not much left in the season, but if you needed Spears, if you need one of these guys, like if you need to use them, then you got to do it. I mean, you have to do it unless you have something else to drop. Again, we don't know if Pollard's coming back yet. We know Miller's going to be the starter. It sounds like Kamara may be be out for a couple weeks. So I'd give Miller the slight edge over Spears, but if Pollard's going to be out this week and your opponent could potentially use him against you, maybe you just have to do it. But ideally you'd like to keep Corum just in case you need him for next week. But God forbid something happens to Kyron. I have Kyron in a big league this week too, so I hope that doesn't happen. I don't have Corum. So yeah, only if you really need to do it. Lucius Varenis 44 says, would you go Strange or Ferguson half PPR? I'd go Strange. He's getting the targets, Yeah. I would go Strange there. I mean, Ferguson, still kind of working his way back from that brutal concussion he had. I think I go Strange. Snowchild says full flex, full PPR, Scary, Terry, or Henry. We're going Henry. David Koo says pick 2 flex, Keenan, Aaron Jones, Bucky, Ladd. We're going to go Aaron Jones and Bucky. And then Perico says Denver Falcons or Colts defense. And we're going back to the Falcons team. I hate to say it, but I'm going back to the Falcons defense against Tim Boyle. And that's it, guys. I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Again, like, subscribe, share, hit that notification button. We will be back tomorrow. The mediators will be on maybe around 9 doing some, more start sits. I think Pete and I are going to do a couple more playoff drafts tomorrow on Underdog or DK. So check that out. Thursday we'll be back also for more stardom sit-ems. Friday stardom sit-ems. So, as the injuries come in, as things change, ask these questions again to the other guys, get the consensus opinion. It's good to ask around. We're all pretty knowledgeable. So, and then obviously one last start sit on Sunday morning, but I appreciate you guys. Thanks again for joining us. C. Xavier says, thanks. More context for dropping Corum question. I have Kyron, Mixon, Jacobs, Irving, and 2 running backs, 2 wide receiver flex. So it's probably more blocking. Yeah. I mean, you're pretty good there. So if you really need to block it, do it. I don't mind it. Thanks, guys. Follow me on X at Fantasy Savvy. You can see it below. Appreciate that as well. Take care. Brush your hair. We'll see you tomorrow.